Hi everyone, welcome back for another video review. Today we are going to look at the AJH Synth module MiniMod CV Mix-Offset-VCA. This is a multifunctional utility module for MiniMod modules, but also for any other Eurorack module in your system. It includes a 4-channels polarizing mixer. Each input has a dedicated knob. The output, of course, has a dedicated control knob. And you get offset, inversion, amplification, CV source, and it can also convert bipolar signals into unipolar signals. So if you have a modulation that is plus minus 5 volts, but surely some of the modules in your system require a unipolar CV at their input, then you can change that plus minus 5 volt to 0 to 5 volts, or even adding more offset to go higher, but stay unipolar, so only positive, for example. Input 4 and control 4 can be switched to BCV offset, or input, a second input, to the VCA. That's enough talking. You got an idea what this is supposed to be. You know me, I like to get my hands dirty, so let's start plugging things in and see what this can do for us. Right, let's start with something simple so we can see what each of these input and knobs can do for us. I'm going to take the envelope, well, an envelope from the DH ADSR envelope generator, another MiniMod module. I'm sending the original envelope as it comes out of here into the into the oscilloscope, and it's the red envelope you see right now on the screen. And then I'm going to take the same envelope, a copy of it, and send it to the input on the CV Mix-Offset-VCA module. Then I'll take the output of this CV mixer and sending it to input 1, which is the green waveform on the oscilloscope. Right now it's just a flat green line because the attenuator for input 1 is set to 0, so it's not letting anything through. The same output, a copy of it, goes to the 1 volt per octave input on the MiniMod VCO, so we can clearly hear what the CV source is doing. Once we start to open things up, the output, and it doesn't matter, I'm using this sawtooth, goes to the audio input on this VCA so we can hear the sound. Now it's just going to be tone because we're not sending anything in. Alright, so let's get the audio up. Right, now this is when we input something into input 1. Input 1 works as an attenuverter. So now it's fully attenuating the signal, so it's 0. As I open the attenuation, I will start to let some of this signal through to the VCO until I will fully open it and I will have the full original envelope going, reaching the VCO. I can of course go counterclockwise, so I'm going to invert the signal gradually until I can reach full inversion. As you can see from the oscilloscope, the red envelope is the original one, and now we have an inverted version reaching the VCO, and of course it's quite low pitch with 32 feet and the full inverted signal, so it's a very low pitch going there. Right. With nothing plugged into this input, input 1 functions as a CV source, and it gives us -6 to +6 volts. So, you can use it for drones. In other words, I'm adding an offset to the pitch. So in this case, it goes to the pitch. So it's shifting the pitch up or down if I rotate it the other way around. I don't go all the way up, well, just don't want to blow up tweeters for you guys. Okay, and that was input 1. Now, let's send the same envelope as before, but to input 2. Input 2, again, is just an attenuverter. So input 1 was an attenuverter with something present at the input, with nothing plugged into the input. This was just working as a CV source. Input 2 is an attenuverter, so again, we can send all of the signal to the output and then to the VCO, or we can invert the signal. Now we can start to mix, for example, some of the signal, right, with some offset from here. I'm going to add a DC voltage to this output, which, okay, if I rotate clockwise, I will be shifting the overall pitch up. Counterclockwise, I will be shifting the pitch down. So you can see the original waveform, the red one, is the full amplitude. Now this is attenuating the red waveform a little bit, right? This one here. More, less. So I'm only taking a portion of the original amplitude and sending it to the VCO. With the input 1 CV source, I'm adding an offset, a constant offset, which allows me to move that portion, the selection, up and down, in this case changing the pitch. You know, we could have sent it to, I don't know, to the resonance on a filter module or whatever. It's CV source, you can send anywhere. Okay, so let's put this to 0. And let's look at input 3. Now, input 3 has a 2 times gain. So it's very useful to amplify CV sources. So let's reduce the amplitude of this envelope. And, you know, now we have a much smaller signal. And with input 3 control, we can now let the original signal in, right? But we can also, let me slow down this a little bit. We can also start amplifying it. And it goes to, you know, twice the input signal. And we can do the same, you know, it's bipolar control, so we can invert it and amplify it the other way around, which is very useful. The amplification is, of course, very handy to have. There may be a module that requires a higher amplitude CV source, and you don't have the CV source at that amplitude, but you can amplify it with this. Or you could send a smaller, let's say you have a CV source going to, for example, the pitch of a VCO, and you don't want to alter that, but you want a amplified version of the same CV source to go to the resonance or the cutoff frequency of a filter. So you can send the original to the VCO, and you could then send a copy in here, amplify it, and the bigger amplitude version of that same shape, of that same waveform, just more amplitude, send it to some of the modulation controls or whatever. So you have that same shape, but 2 different versions going into 2 different destinations. Then we have the 4th input, which, as we said, can be switched to an additional CV input for the VCA or to control the CV offset with the input here, with the control knob. There are a number of things you can do with this VCA, especially, you know, in combination with all the CVs. Of course, we can't cover all of them, but let's start with what we already have going on. So we have we have that red envelope going into the input here. Let's maybe put it here so we can attenuate it and so on, and keep this as an offset. And yeah, well, then we sending the output of this module to the pitch control of this VCO, and the output of this VCO is going into this final VCA. Now, we're not sending any envelope to the CV control of this VCA, so if we just open it, right, we have a constant tone coming out of this triangle thing. Sorry, this sawtooth. Now, if we start to add the red envelope, we are changing the pitch of the VCO. Okay. And let's say you want to keep this bass tone underneath the other notes on top of it, and but you only want a selection of this envelope modifying the pitch. You could I mean, that's the problem, is you can do so many things with it. You could send a square wave into the VCA CV input, and as you can see from the oscilloscope, what's happening now is that this square wave is opening and closing this VCA, not that one. That is constantly open. So we have a constant tone going directly here. And we have the square wave sampling sections of that envelope and sending those CV voltages to the pitch. So the pitch is only changing when the square wave is positive. We can add some offset. You can also use the input number 4 as an offset control for this VCA, not for that one. So now we have the triangle influencing the offset opening and closing of this VCO, of this VCA, together with the square wave. And carrying on from here, you could send the sawtooth back and send the output of the original envelope not to the pitch, but to the audio input on that VCA. Or you could send the original envelope to the pitch of this VCO. Now what's happening is that there is silence in between those opening and closing of the VCA. In reality, this VCA, it's always open. It's just that we're sending a signal to this input only when this VCA is opening, and so these waves are going through this output to the audio input on that VCA. One more thing that I might not have mentioned when I was describing the general functions of this module is that you can also change a unipolar signal into bipolar. I said you can change a bipolar into unipolar, but you can do the opposite. So let's see an application, an example of this. So if you're new to this kind of stuff, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. I have a simple sequence playing. The sequencer is sending CV pitch to this oscillator. We're taking the shark tooth output into the input of this lovely filter. The output of the filter goes into the final VCA. The sequencer is also sending gates to this envelope generator, and this envelope is opening and closing the VCA for us. So that's just a simple patch. Pitch, gate, CV, there you go. Okay. Now, if you look at the oscilloscope, we still have the that red envelope, right, going into the oscilloscope, and then from the oscilloscope it's copied, the signal is multed, and it's coming here into this processor. And now the output of this CV mixer is this cable, which ends up here, it's not connected to anything. Now we are going to, so as you can hear it now, this is the patch playing with a static setting for the filter. Now I'm going to add this patch, this cable, which is the output of this module, to the CV frequency, the cutoff frequency input. And I'm going to send more of this red envelope, which will be our green output on the oscilloscope, to the filter. Okay, now if you look at the oscilloscope, this is a unipolar signal. You see, it goes from 0 to around, to almost 8 volts, okay? But we can change this unipolar signal into a bipolar signal, so we can have a negative and positive change of the cutoff frequency. So now I'm going to use the offset to offset negatively the whole signal, so it's going to it will become bipolar. And see how the sound changes, of course. You see? Now we are about -4 to +4. We can reduce it a little bit overall, the amplitude. And of course we can do some more things with this processor. Let's send a triangle as an additional variation. Well, actually, let's not put it there, let's put it here. Okay, let's do one last example. We're going to send some random CV into input 2, so we can use this as a attenuverter, and this one as an offset, and then we can add something else to input 3. Let's see, let's run the random voltages and random gates. Now the orange, what we have here, it's the random signals coming in, and there is the orange waveform, and then we have the output going into a quantizer. Okay, so the output here is going into a quantizer. The quantized output is coming back into the pitch control of the VCO, and then it just filter envelopes and VCA. So let's get the gates back. So the orange waveform is the original random CV, and the green one will be what we modify with the CV mixer and offset and so on. Right, so let's let some of those CVs through. More amplitude you let through, the more of the original CV range you can cover, so you're gonna catch more of those higher pitched sounds. And so of course you could use this for a random melody like now, or your own sequenced melody, and you can use this Attenuverter to control during a performance how much of that melody the audience can hear, depending on where you are in the song. We can use the offset to increase or decrease the overall pitch. Let's add some variation. Let's add, for example, a triangle to input 3. This is going to add triangle voltage. Square wave. You have control how much of this variation you want to introduce. And of course, with changing the rate, you can come up with different rhythmic patterns. If we take this out, you will hear the difference. Mixing CV, so you can add lines in and out, melodic lines. And please, if you found this video useful, help me out with likes, shares, subscribing. Don't miss out on my next videos, and have fun. Happy Euro racking!